Hello, world. Welcome to another exciting live broadcast of the OMB Policy Library team's work. This is a bi-weekly demo that we do to share out the work that we're doing with OMB on developing a policy library tool for navigating all the fun policy documents in the government. We've got a handful of awesome things to show to you, so I'm going to share my screen. We'll do some demos, then we'll open a call-in line at the end where everybody can chat and provide feedback and thoughts. So there is my first slide. And here we go. All right, so this is the conclusion of the Noodle sprint. We go in ABC order of different types of pasta. It's a long story, but we're kind of picking up from previous work we did in the spring, diving into this. And it's the sprint demo of today, October 6th. So we'll dive right into the demo. First, really quick thing, just kind of happening in the background. We're working on some staffing changes and growth. We're going to add some new skills to the team to help us build out new features and parts of the experience. So this is just kind of an update to let everybody know there might be some new faces coming in. You'll see us in the repo. You'll see us on these demos. So that's very exciting. It takes a little bit of time to organize, but this is something that's happening in the background and will again help us increase capacity and do new cool things. Also going on in the background, not something that we can really publicly show, but we're working through the ATO process to get this set up through the Office of Government-Wide Policy, which is basically making sure everything's secure and it's a good application that can run and it's not going to expose government or public to any sort of dangerous thing. So we're also working on that in the background. There's a lot of kind of questions and just a lot of tech nerdery in the background, but that is going forward also. And with that, I'm going to toss it to CM. We'll talk about interface and improvements.
Thank you, sir. So let me share my screen now. What I will be showing is the changes to the application for this past sprint. I'll have these two tabs open. The left tab is the old code, so what's currently in production. The right tab is the new code, what we'll be shipping today. And I just want to have them open so we can see them side by side. So the first thing you might notice when I was talking about tabs is that we've got a favicon now. We're using a star throughout the application as a divider. It's on the home page, it's on the 404 page, it's on a few different places, so it's kind of iconic for the application. Faviconic, some might say. I won't. But so we've got a favicon now. We've also made some improvements to the user interface in terms of giving them feedback faster. So in the old code, if I were to search for terms, I would see loady, loady, loady. The user's waiting for their search result. We've Ajaxified that so that if I search for terms, and press enter only once, then it all comes through via Ajax. So all these searches are now Ajaxified, which gives the user feedback faster. Similarly, we have everywhere throughout the application, we now have all the links being Ajaxified. So if I go to privacy policy, I see the little twirly guy and get the results. So the user is seeing the results faster. It certainly feels faster for them. Let's look now at policy titles. So for the most part, when we're looking at policies, we display the policy number with the rest of the title. So for example, when we display the policy title link, we include that A11 number here. We had been failing to include it in the filter list at the top. So that's a small change, but one that makes the application much more consistent. Basically, everywhere that we're going to display the policy title, we will prepend that ID number if it's available. More important is the home page. So let me hop over there. This is the old code. You'll recall that we had a full text search in the header, so we can start searching. But confusingly, we had a topic search in the middle of the screen. So we could either click it or we could start typing and find results that way. This proved to be very confusing to users. So what we've done is in the new form of the homepage, we've removed in the upper right-hand corner that full text search, and instead replaced the topic search with the full text search. So this is just a normal search bar for folks now. And this will give them queries over the text of their requirements, which is what they expect. So that was a big change in terms of visible features. I also want to show a change with regards to performance. So the biggest change that we made is actually behind the scenes, and it's around a framework for writing this application. Previously, we made ourselves responsible for making sure that all the right files were compiled in the right way. And that led to some less than ideal results. So here I'm going to throttle in the old code the speed of the connection to 3G, which it's fine if you have it's equivalent to having a mobile device. Usually the White House actually has a less good connection than 3G. But so on 3G, we see that if we look at the bottom of the screen here, after 5 seconds, it's still loading. So everything gets loaded at 7 seconds, and the DOM isn't usable. That's what this blue means, until roughly 7 seconds in. We're actually transferring a whole megabyte of content. And that's because we're effectively have the entirety of the site in that one download. Now, let me do the same thing. Set us up so that we are throttling at the same percentage. Refresh the page. So we're still on a slow connection, but we get the results in roughly half the time. More interestingly, the DOM is usable after only a second. And this is because we're now cutting up the content. The amount of bytes over the wire is less than half of what we had before. We've also been working with the cloud.gov folks to make this even faster, so that if you're on a mobile connection or you have a bad connection, as some of us do in the White House, you'll get the content much faster. Finally, I wanted to mention that we had some accessibility tweaks. These aren't visible things. They were things like making sure that the page had a language attribute, which helps screen readers, and ensuring that headers were in the right semantic order. I think that's all in terms of interface changes. I will pass over to Carolyn.
Hello. I'm Carolyn, and I'm going to talk about the design and user research that we did this past sprint. So I'm getting my screen up. And happily, the title says Design and User Research, which is what I want to talk about. Cool. So really quickly, the sprint, we were focused primarily on usability testing, which is sort of making sure that the designs we're coming up with actually work for users, or if they don't work for users, that we find that out fast before we spend money putting it in to develop it. So we developed a rough prototype. And by we, I mean Micah Taylor and then Brad Nunnally joined us for a week just for fun. So we developed a rough prototype to test how searching by topic was functioning and how well that worked. We talked to 6 agency implementers. So these are people who are responsible for implementing policy within their own agencies outside of OMB. And they all work for the technology field because that's the content we have currently. And it doesn't make sense to test content for folks who don't use that particular content. And we learned a lot more about what kinds of time-based filtering users are interested in. So that was very helpful. To start out, like, this is something you will never see actually in the UI, but it's often helpful to sort of map out the task flow that a user is going to take when they want to do something. So in this case, we say, like, okay, so the user has a question about a topic that policy touches. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to type their search terms in the search box. And then the next thing, we'll look at all the search results that they got back. From there, they have 3 possible options. They can click on the desired result if they see it, or they can refine their search based on those results. So that assumes that there's some sort of filtering or advanced search option. or they just start over from a new search. And so you can see the arrows that are moving backwards are in blue. And also the file I was using had some really strange behavior on the back arrows and how it styled those, which I didn't think was that important to fix for this diagram, but just know that those are supposed to be arrows. There's an alternative path that we're sort of working on the side, which is where you would browse to a topic instead. So you could click on see all topics, you see everything in the list. You click on the desired topic, and then you go back into the flow of see all search results. So let's say they keep going, they click on the desired search result, then they would probably want to see that result within the policy. And then there's a few other things, like that could be, if they're just answering their own question, that would be the end of their journey. Or they might bookmark the link to that particular requirement because it may be something that they refer to over and over and they just want to get to it quickly. They may want to bookmark to the policy document. Maybe they want the entire thing. Or they might copy the link to send to a colleague, or they might copy the requirement text itself and paste it into an email or document to send to a colleague. So it's good to think about like what the whole journey is and what are all the steps it takes to get there so that we can design accordingly. So you can see in our prototype, we're starting at the beginning where the user has a question and they want to type it in. And this is the process that we sort of tested out. Actually, if I go back a little bit, we tested out this top row of what that would look like, those behaviors. So starting with the home page, and we got feedback, so we're just kind of going to go through both. So the improvement that CM showed earlier, just by removing the topic search that was in the middle and replacing it with like the keyword or text search there, people found that to be much clearer than we'd had in previous usability tests, where they just understood that there was one primary action and they knew what that action was. And a lot of people, like before we even prompted them, just started trying to type in the type box, which based on the prototype was actually an imaginary type box, but at least we know that it was clear what the intention was. They also correctly anticipated what we intended behind the view all topics links, and they had pretty positive, they expressed some positive, feelings about that being a possibility. So we would ask, like, what would you expect if you saw that? And they'd say, like, I'd be able to expect to see view all topics in the list since I don't know what all is being covered. So when people don't know what keyword or search term they want, they're going to want to see and discover it through the interface. Now, the outstanding questions there are, some people seem to want a hierarchical list where things are grouped in categories, and some people just want to see like one giant alphabetical list. So we can do more research to figure out what is the dominant preference there. A couple people tripped up on the apply to your agency wording in the header, and that text was there from a previous iteration where you could type in your agency and find policies that only applied to you. But since we removed that function from the home page for now, that language probably needs to change too. People really like to see the new policies. They felt that that was a source they could go to if somebody had told them that a new policy had been issued. And so what we had them do from the home page is we had them sort of fake enter a predefined search term. So we picked data center consolidation as the search term. And on the search results page, we ran into the problem in a big way that people think about policies in terms of policy documents as opposed to individual requirements. And so this, this was just like a major mental model breakdown of the way that we're handling the data in the library so far, and then the way the users are thinking of the data. That being said, there were some positive results. People liked to see the snippets of the text. They liked to see that there was a context from where their search term was coming up, and it gave them a little bit more of a preview of what the content was talking about. But they're a little bit unclear about what those snippets were. One person thought the top one was a summary of the policy document. They didn't expect them to have two different search results from within the same document because they're expecting the search results to be the document itself, and some little other confusion. So it was a little bit like of a mixed bag, like some things worked, but some things didn't. People generally understood how to dig deeper, so they would either click on the entire box or they would click on the View and Policy link. One of the issues that they had was that they weren't immediately clear why these two paragraphs came up in the search results. And a lot of them specifically asked, I want to see the phrase that I searched for highlighted, because right now I have to dig through everything and see the term. So they're a little unclear of why the search results were the top search results. Everybody that we talked to just wanted to see the most recent policy guidance, and they wanted to see the issuance date on whatever search results came up. Now the note here is that everybody that we talked to this time works in IT, and we know that they have a much stronger emphasis on looking at what is most current, whereas in other domains, for example, acquisitions, they might want to know, like, what was the policy in place at a given time or when this contract was written. Moving on to, say, we've seen the search results, we've decided which one we want, and we've clicked on that one. Here we have a policy detail page. And they really loved seeing the paragraph from the search highlighted. They immediately understood that that meant that that was the same paragraph they had seen and clicked on in the previous screen. They also understood the relationship from the data on the right-hand column, which provides a little bit more metadata for that chunk of text. They understood the relationship of that data to the paragraph just from the UI cues. However, people expected to see a little bit more metadata about the policy itself near the top, which include issue date, the issuing body, so whatever agency or group issues it, and one person mentioned revision number. So they just want to see a little bit more information so they know more about what they're looking at. And then some of the folks that we tested with were particularly familiar with the 25-point implementation plan, and they knew the text really well, and they were really thrown off guard that some parts of the text were missing. There was nothing for them indicating for them that there was only sections of text that were available here. They expected to see the full text, and since that's not what they saw, they felt very confused by that. And then there was a fair amount of anxiety about having to navigate through some very, very long documents without any type of table of contents or within document navigation scheme. They really just want to be able to jump quickly to the relevant sections. And there wasn't any one clear way that it seemed like you would want to do that. You could do it many different ways. You could have a table of contents, you could have the headings over in the sidebar, or you could have a way of like tabbing through everything that relates to a particular topic. We also tested out some advanced search options, in particular agency or time-based filtering. And the time-based filtering, we kind of took a stab at what we thought might be interesting, just to give people something to react to, knowing that they would tell us what they wanted. In general, people understood that this was an advanced search and that these were options that would help them refine their search results, so that was communicated. They weren't sure if the agency or group filter was indicating the issuing agency or the agencies that were impacted by a policy, but they liked both ideas. So whichever one it is, we just probably want to clarify it with the text, which one we mean for that box, or we may want to do a little more research to see if like one or the other is more important to people, or if they want to do both. There could be some refinement there. Let's moving forward. The time-based ones, we got a lot more varied feedback. Ones, they didn't see that the first 3 people we talked to didn't see any need to search by reporting cycle, so we ended up removing that from the testing because we couldn't come up with a potential use case where that might be relevant. they also weren't really that interested in seeing past deadlines, and they weren't clear what the time period due soon meant. So they wanted a very specific time, like due soon, due in the next 6 months, due in the next year, just something that's a little bit more concrete. And then a few users didn't understand what sunset dates meant. So a few users were confused by that. A few people got it. A few people understood that it had to do with like the life cycle management of the content itself. That could be something that could be just be clarified through changes in the text copy or stuff like that. So to sum up, like sort of ranked the problems in order of priority of things that we really need to address. So like the first one is that users just don't understand what requirements are. Their mental model is strongly referenced around policy documents in the entire document, and chunking it out into requirements is just too abstract for them. It's really creating barriers all through the interface for them to be able to interact and understand. Partly because of that, the search results are unclear. They're expecting to see those policy documents as opposed to snippets of the policy. And part of that was just due to missing information in the UI. So there weren't enough context clues to let them know what exactly they were looking at. And then again, it impacts the policy detail page where they're expecting to see the full policy text instead of like bits and pieces of it. So we either need to provide the full document text or better explain what they're seeing when they're not seeing the full text, which brings up to the next part, which is that, there's a decision point, which is, in the short term, like in the near term, do we kind of switch gears and make a document-centric app and then start pulling out types of content within those documents, like highlighting them or providing definitions? Or do we continue on this approach of a requirement section 1 and start filling into the gaps into the full policy text? And how that might look different is like if we take the search results, for example, if we switch gears and go with a document-centric app, then the answer is that the search results would be specific policy documents. So one search result would be one policy document. The next result would be a completely different policy document. And then we would rank them somehow in order of, how many times the search term appeared or how relevant it was and how recent it was. If we go with the requirement-centric one, we might, in the search results, decide that we're going to change some way that information is presented so that it's a little more clear that those are requirements and bits of documents, but still not go all the way to being like, have each search result be a document itself. So those are one of the questions that we would like to sort of discuss in the discussion phase next. And for that, I will transition back to Will, who can carry us out.
Yes. And our next demo will be October 20th. We're going to have kind of a shorter sprint this week, or these next 2 weeks, due to a team meeting that's basically bringing everybody together. So we'll be sort of out of commission for 3 days, but we're going to dive into it. And also we have Monday off for a federal holiday. So we will be back doing another demo on October 20th on the same YouTube channel. You can also watch our previous videos on this YouTube channel. There's playlists of all the previous work that we've done, so you can kind of get caught up and see how far we've come. And with that, now we will jump to our sort of open forum chat session. You can go ahead and close this YouTube channel after you call this phone number. So like dial into this conference line. We'll all join in at the same time. I'll keep this up for a little while. And we'll talk about what we've demoed and talk about the direction and where we should go next in this next sprint. So please give it a ring, and we will see you on the chat line and on the internet in the future.